retired cops Lou Eppolito and Stephen Caracappa have been exposed as mob killers.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're discussing law enforcement officers through the decades who were eventually revealed to be ruthless murderers.
No wonder there was paranoia in the suburbs.
Yes, everybody was afraid.
Craig Pyer.
California's determinate sentencing law doesn't leave many options for Judge Richard Huffman. He can either grant Craig Pyer probation, or he can put him away for 15 years to life.
California Highway Patrol Officer Pyer was arrested in the 1980s for the murder of 20-year-old Kara Knott. On December 27, 1986, Pyer stopped Knott under the guise of a routine traffic check on an isolated overpass. He then attacked her and pushed her off the bridge to her death. The investigation into Knott's murder revealed a pattern of Pyer's predatory behavior as other women came forward with complaints about his misconduct.
It was 2.5 weeks after the murder that homicide detectives went to Pyer's Poway home and led him away in handcuffs. That a highway patrolman would be charged with murder was as shocking to the community as Kara Knott's murder had been.
In 1988, he was convicted of Knott's murder and sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Pyer's case highlighted the potential dangers of unchecked authority and underscored the need for increased accountability among law enforcement officers.
Even today, just mention the words Mercy Road or the name Kara Knott, and everyone in San Diego has the same reaction.
Stephanie Lazarus.
I'm trying to, turn my memory back, and I'm trying. I can't even picture the conversation.
This Los Angeles detective only faced justice decades after her crime. In 1986, Sherry Rasmussen was found brutally murdered in her home, and the crime went unsolved for decades. However, in 2009, DNA evidence linked Lazarus to the crime, revealing a tangled web of jealousy and deceit.
This particular case had something where DNA could be extracted, and that's what brought it to the top.
Can you tell us what that was?
No.
Lazarus had dated Rasmussen's husband before their marriage, and her actions stemmed from unresolved romantic jealousy. Her training and position helped her evade suspicion for years. In 2012, Lazarus was convicted of first-degree murder, again highlighting the disturbing truth that even those sworn to uphold the law can commit heinous crimes.
With today's technology by Scientific Investigation Division, was able to lead to absolute identification.
Richard DeAngelo.
It was a matter of 4 seconds, 5 seconds, and my training just kicked in.
A New York City transit police officer, DeAngelo was convicted in the tragic escalation of a 1996 parking dispute that led to the death of Charles Campbell. The conflict occurred outside the DeAngelo family deli in Dobbs Ferry, New York, over a parking spot. During a heated altercation, the off-duty officer shot and killed Campbell. Initially convicted of second-degree murder, DeAngelo's conviction was controversially overturned in 2008, only to be equally controversially reinstated in 2010. He was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. The case stirred significant public debate over self-defense, the use of deadly force, and the responsibilities of off-duty law enforcement in violent confrontations.
Mr. DeAngelo will pay for his crime for the next 9 years. Then he is eligible for parole, and we will be there then that day too.
Antoinette Frank.
In 1995, Frank was convicted of first-degree murder after a fellow NOPD officer and 2 workers were killed at a family restaurant in New Orleans.
This former New Orleans officer took part in a brutal triple homicide. In 1995, while on duty, Frank, alongside her accomplice, robbed a restaurant where she had worked off-duty. During the robbery, Frank shot and killed her fellow officer, Ronald Williams, and the restaurant's owners.
15 months after her graduation, Officer Frank races to a multiple homicide at the Kim An restaurant, determined to get there before her colleague.
The crime shocked the community, as Frank had previously been seen as a committed officer. However, her actions revealed a darker side motivated by financial desperation and a sense of betrayal. In 1995, Frank was convicted of the murders and sentenced to death.
The real puzzle to me is how did she make this transition from somebody who certainly had some character flaws and personality issues to being a murderer?
Charles Becker. Becker was a New York City lieutenant involved in one of the most notorious corruption scandals of the early 20th century. In 1912, he was implicated in the murder of Herman Rosenthal, a gambler who had been speaking out against police corruption. Becker, who led the NYPD's anti-vice squad, was accused of orchestrating Rosenthal's murder to silence him. The high-profile case exposed widespread issues within the NYPD and jarred the public. Despite maintaining his innocence, Becker was convicted of murder in 1914 and executed in 1915. His case highlighted the dangers of deep-seated corruption in law enforcement. Gerard Schaefer.
I'm supposed to be accused of 34 murders all over the place, but nobody knows the names, the jurisdictions. But the reality of it is that I have never been even linked to a crime scene anywhere.
A former sheriff's deputy in Martin County, Florida, Schaefer was a notorious serial killer who exploited his position of authority to commit heinous crimes. In the early 1970s, Schaefer was convicted of the brutal murders of 2 teenage girls, but he is suspected of having killed many more. Schaefer's modus operandi involved using his badge to lure victims, often hitchhikers, before torturing and killing them. His double life as a law enforcement officer and a sadistic killer was revealed when incriminating evidence was discovered at his home, including personal items belonging to several missing women.
When I write something like this, some people say, well, you write that, you must be a homicidal maniac killer.
Manuel Pardo.
Manny loved being a police officer. When they fired him, in his mind, he was still a police officer.
In the mid-1980s, this once trusted Florida police officer embarked on a murderous killing spree and took the lives of 9 people, most of whom were involved in the business of illegal substances. Pardo, who initially claimed to be ridding society of criminals, justified his actions by portraying himself as a vigilante.
I never said I was crazy. That was my attorney who said he didn't think I was right in the head, but I never, ever said I was crazy.
However, his methodical killings contradicted any sense of actual justice, revealing a disturbing lust for violence. In 1987, he was apprehended and then eventually convicted of multiple murders and eventually was executed in 2012, bringing an end to a dark chapter in Florida's history.
I had no doubt in my mind. I would never kill an innocent person. That I couldn't live with, you know? But one of these people, I go to sleep great. I go shoot, put 20 bullets in them and go to bed like a baby.
Louis Eppolito and Stephen Caracappa.
I think they were 2 halves with a ragged edge that came together like gears.
2 New York City detectives became infamous as the Mafia cops. During the 1980s and early 1990s, the 2 men exploited their positions in the NYPD to work as hitmen and informants for the Lucchese crime family. They were involved in at least 8 murders as well as various other crimes, including drug trafficking and kidnapping.
Eppolito was open, roaring, ego showing. The other guy was furtive, silent, highly dangerous.
Their shocking betrayal of public trust came to light in 2005, leading to their conviction in 2006. Both were sentenced to life imprisonment for their roles in these crimes. The sordid tale of Eppolito and Caracappa highlighted the dangerous potential when officers betray society and align with organized crime.
Eppolito and Caracappa face a long list of charges, including murder, obstruction of justice, narcotics distribution, and money laundering.
Joe DeAngelo.
Seeing him in that orange jumpsuit, it must have given you some pleasure.
Yes, I feel there's closure. I know where he is now.
A former police officer, DeAngelo gained infamy as the Golden State Killer. Operating in California from 1974 to 1986, his spree included numerous burglaries and murders. Initially, his law enforcement role helped him evade capture, as he exploited his insider knowledge to avoid detection.
So you see an offender that over the course of more than a decade, he's moving through the state, and at that point in time, law enforcement is not conclusively connecting the dots that this is the same guy.
However, a breakthrough came decades later when advances in DNA technology led to his arrest in 2018, revealing how he maintained an outwardly normal existence while terrorizing communities. In 2020, he pled guilty to multiple counts of murder and other crimes, ultimately being sentenced to life imprisonment.
You can see that Joseph DeAngelo is no different today than he was 45 years ago.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into Settings and switch on your notifications. Drew Peterson.
Confined away from the general population, this serial husband is reportedly looking for wife number 5.
This former Bolingbrook, Illinois sergeant became notorious nationwide after the suspicious disappearances and deaths of 2 of his wives. In 2004, Peterson's third wife, Kathleen Savio, was found dead in her bathtub, initially ruled as an accidental drowning. However, suspicions grew when his fourth wife, Stacey Ann Kales, went missing in 2007.
Law enforcement still follows up on tips and leads, clues that many believe will eventually point right at Drew Peterson.
In light of Stacey's disappearance, Savio's death was re-examined and ruled a homicide. In 2009, Peterson was arrested and subsequently convicted in 2012 for Savio's murder. His disturbing behavior and pattern of domestic violence revealed a chilling abuse of power as he used his training to evade suspicion.
I promise, unless you marry me, I'm going to kill you. I'm making a joke.
I will guarantee you that's not going to happen, my friend.
Do you know of any other notorious figures that could have been on this list? Let us know in the comments. Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.